Yeah, okay. So, hi, Lee. How are you? Good to see you, Lee.
Hi, Rabbi. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for having me on.
Okay, so a week ago, the second day of Passover, was 30 days since Jerry's funeral. And during in Jewish tradition, after 30 days of the person's passing, his soul gets uplifted to a higher level in the world of truth, in the world to come. And while his soul is being uplifted, it's a custom amongst Jewish people that on the 30th day, the friends and families, you get together and learn a little bit and talk about his legacy, things that was important to the person that passed away, to kind of continue doing something in his honor in this world while he physically is not here. So it's a good thing to get together. We have here everyone from all different parts of the world and all different connected to Jerry from various different decades. Some of us we just know him from the last couple of years, and so I'm sure everyone has a lot what to say. That how Jerry made a difference in their lives. I'm just going to share one thing, and then we'll open it up for everybody. I spoke a little bit about the funeral, but one thing I didn't mention by the funeral, which I thought was very something we could all learn from Jerry, is that he always prayed for little things. And just a couple months ago, we actually, in our Chabad house, right in our house right over here, he came into Saturday morning services and he made an announcement that we need to make a prayer for a baseball player that didn't get into the Hall of Fame for some reason for many years, and he asked if we could daven for him in order to get he should be inducted in the Hall of Fame. So, I mean, we're usually, I would probably say, we don't really pray for baseball players in the synagogue, but because it was Jerry, and I knew this, if this person was important to Jerry, then he must be really, like he said, then he was a real mensch. And because of Jerry, we allowed the prayer for him, and it was actually a very nice service. We had a big crowd, and I think Michael, you were there that week, so like 3 months ago, and
yes.
Sure enough, the next day,
he got inducted.
Yeah.
The power of prayer. There you go.
Exactly, the power of our prayer. So I think Jerry reminds us, or reminds me, how it's always good, obviously, to pray for important things. But Maimonides actually writes that a person should accustom himself to always look to thank God and pray for even small things, for like pray to find a parking spot or things that small nature, or ask, and of course don't forget to thank God when you get the parking spot and the small things that we get. And I think because Jerry even I'm sure he had a lot to pray for, but it seems like the little things is what it was unique, how he always he thought of making a prayer for the things that didn't seem to be so the utmost important. So I think it's a lesson that everyone can learn from, to always look out for other people, pray for other people, and don't you never know how powerful prayer is. And I think that's a good way to elevate a soul, to take upon a small a small lesson for ourselves to go in that direction. So maybe Emily, if you wanna share, you could just talk about whatever's on your mind, whatever you're feeling, and afterwards we'll do a little bit of a study of the Mishnah that's connected to his name, Yaakov ben Meir, which Mishnah is the same letters as. Do you see my screen?
No, we see you.
Yeah,
We
not
see-
yet. Now it's coming up now.
Oh.
Oh.
Here. See the letters of the word Shama in Hebrew, Nun Shin Mem He, which means soul, is the same letters as the word for Mishnah, Mem Shin Nun He. So we're going to study a few little paragraphs of Mishnah that's connected to his name that will elevate his soul to even a higher state. Go ahead, Emily.
Yeah, Emily, can you tell us, because some of us didn't really know him personally, can you tell us where he was living all these past years? And can you tell us what kind of a job he had and something more about him than we saw on the Facebook page?
Sure. I had a little speech written up that I had actually read at a very short speech that I read at his burial, but I know many of you were not able to be there. But I definitely want to answer your questions because these people who know Uncle Gerald, he was Jerry to the entire world, but Uncle Gerald to me alone and my brother, of course, and my kids. I'm blown away by the love and the community and the just absolute, I'm speechless at the love amongst you people who only know each other from this Facebook group and your common memories of where you grew up. It is like the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. And he spent so much time telling me about how I posted a picture and I posted a story and I got 300 likes. I was like, I'm not surprised. You should write a book. But it's just been amazing to see the outpouring of love. Oh, my internet connection is unstable. All my kids are online. So Uncle Gerald grew, I think as many of you know, grew up originally over on Morris Avenue and then moved over to Concourse Village when he was probably 8 or something like that. Sandy, you probably know better than me.
Yeah, I don't know what year they did,
Yeah.
but yeah, they did move there. Yeah.
So he lived with his big sister, who was 6.5 years older, who was my mother, Anita, and his parents, Frida and Meyer, and his mother's mother, who was Yetta or Edith or Ikta, depending on when you asked him. Right, Sandy? So they lived over on Morris Avenue, I guess probably through the time he was at the first little elementary school that you guys know him from, some of you know him from. And then they moved over to Concourse Village and he lived there with his sister, my mom, and his parents for the rest of his entire life.
Where is Concourse Village? Where was that?
It's right near Yankee Stadium. It's like 2 blocks south.
Oh, okay.
Big high rises, like those things where you buy into them, kind of co-op, middle class housing sort of things that were really popular in the 60s. So his parents, got this apartment and it was a 2-bedroom apartment. And my mom lived with them until she got married at the age of 22. My dad, who had been a teacher at junior high school 22, where Uncle Gerald went. And he thought that was really cool that his sister married one of his teachers. And then they lived there his whole life. And his father, my grandfather, died in, around 1999. He his mother, my grandmother, Frida, her health slowly declined and she never recovered from the death of her husband or my father, who was her son-in-law. They died around the same time. And Uncle Gerald took care of her every need, you know, she raised him. And then when it was time for them to, he took care of him. He took care of her. He took care of her every need. Until she passed away, and she was so fortunate to have him. And then that was the year I got married. So that was 2005. So he has lived alone in that same apartment. And he's been digging out boxes and boxes of photographs that he thought I had, that my mom had. It's a treasure of an apartment.
I asked Jerry once why his parents never moved to Florida. He said because he would have been away from his grandkids. They would have been away from their grandkids. He wouldn't have seen them as often. So.
Oh, they were amazing. They were amazing grandparents. And he was an amazing uncle to me and both my children. And he worked at Yankee Stadium as a beer guy for decades. I think he started part-time when he was in high school, and I think he worked through college at Yankee Stadium, and that was his entire career. And when he got to the point where he felt like he was too old to, you know, be carting cases of beer up and down those steps, became a program guy. And of course, the vendors were not working at Yankee Stadium the last couple of years because of the pandemic, but they were going to go back this year. He was excited to go back. He sent me the papers saying, we're going back this year. I don't think he ever would have retired from that. But he never was a Yankees fan. He was always a Dodgers fan.
I was lucky enough to work with Jerry at Yankee Stadium. I met him in 1972. I think he had started in 70 or 71. And we used to chit chat a lot at Yankee Stadium. And even recently, in speaking to him, I know he felt really close to you folks at the Chabad. He told me several times, you know, how you were there for him when he needed you. And he was just a good guy.
Thank you, Mark. Nice to meet you.
Same.
Lee, you want?
So I was just admiring an old post that Jerry had put up on his Facebook page originally in August of 2019. So I'm Lee. Jerry met me as Officer Stanton. I was previously assigned as a community affairs officer at a precinct that was near Concourse Village, but didn't cover Concourse Village. It's PSA 7, which covered the South Bronx public housing developments. Then Officer Stanton was involved also with Rabbi Chali and everyone over at Chabad South Bronx, as well as Chabad in general, because I grew up in Orange County and had a really close relationship with Chabad in general. So when I got involved from a community policing standpoint, that's how I met Jerry, who was already a loyal congregant and really pillar of the community. And I say that, and that's kind of an understatement, really. Jerry, as I'm looking at the post, I laugh because this is just so Jerry. He won, I don't know what sort of competition it was, but he won a cheesecake from Junior's, the famous cheesecake restaurant. And the first people he thought of sharing that with were the cops down the block at the precinct. And he actually came in unannounced. He came in, he had asked for me. And I remember distinctly the officer who was stationed in front of the building said, somebody get Lee Stanton over here. His friend is here. And Jerry gently but firmly corrected him. And he said, I'm not just Lee's friend. I'm everybody's friend here. And that was the beginning of a really strong relationship between him and the command. And that's really a testament to who Jerry was, who he always will be, and his legacy. He was a pillar of the Bronx. He was sort of my living, breathing lens into old Bronx, what the Bronx used to be like. And one thing Jerry and I talked about a lot, really agreed upon a lot, especially from even a public safety standpoint, was that too often folks who live here in the Bronx are really kind of negative in their outlook and quick to say, well, it's the Bronx. What do you expect? It's supposed to be dirty. It's supposed to be dangerous. Jerry never subscribed to that. Jerry believed in being together in the mission to put the Bronx either on the map in general or back on the map, however you want to look at it. And Jerry was all about the positivity and recognizing the beauty of the Bronx. And I think really that's an easy way to recognize the beauty of himself and his soul. And you know, he was a really huge part of keeping ourselves connected during the COVID pandemic as well. We were, and I say we, I'm talking about Chabad South Bronx in general. We put our heads together when COVID first hit. Was spring of 2020, of course. Passover was looming. We had no idea how to kind of service Jewish residents in the city, let alone residents who remained here in the Bronx. And I work with the NYPD Shomrim Society. It's a group of Jewish police officers, and we kind of revamped a program that we used to give out packages to families of Passover supplies. And thanks to Chabad South Bronx, we were able to identify families across the Bronx that we were able to actually physically deliver packages to, which proved to be a huge, huge game changer during COVID. And we were able to get to individuals safely. And lo and behold, Jerry was a huge, huge part of that. He wanted to take part. He knew the risks of his own health and safety, especially in the early days of COVID, but that didn't really stop him at all. He was very proactive in asking how he could get involved, and he himself hand delivered like 5 or 6 packages to Jewish families that he knew of in the confines of the 44th precinct in the Bronx. Again, putting himself at risk for advocacy in his community. Jerry was and always will be a giant. I had a really, really amazing short period of time with him. And they always say you meet people, whether it's for a reason, a season, a lifetime, or whatnot. But I very much appreciate, and I'm humbled by the reason I think I met Jerry. I learned so much from him, and he will always be in my heart. And I thank you guys for joining me, for allowing me to join you here. And Emily, we speak offline from time to time, but my love is with you and the family always. And I look forward to meeting in person as we celebrate Jerry.
Thank you, Lee. Jerry loved you so much.
I'll just quickly jump right on to kind of bring forth a lot of what my brother Lee ended up pointing out. And Lee, congratulations again, making detective and moving to the Force 6. You're going to be much needed there. And I think Jerry would be extraordinarily proud of you for your elevation into going to a deeper part of the Bronx that definitely needs good Yiddishkeit and a good man to carry on his legacy as well. So I want to commend you on that end of that, brother. For me, Jerry was always the mayor of Jewish South Bronx. He was the man who kind of kept the time capsule of an era that, for me, reminded me a lot of my grandparents and my great grandparents who lived right off of the concourse. And it was something that I didn't get I didn't have as much of an opportunity to have a lot of conversations with my grandfather about, because he passed away when I was 18 years old, around on Christmas Day. And I don't have the closest relationship to my grandmother. So when it comes to history of the Bronx and the Jewish Bronx as it was, when I got the job at the DA's office and I moved to the Grand Concourse, I kind of came in by the seat of my pants and realized that I'm going into an area where I heard there's a lot of history and a lot of stories that I was told by my mother, but I could not get a sense as to what it was like to live there and get that perspective. And that was important for me, especially taking on the job that I did and trying to understand the community in which I started serving then and I continue to serve now. And Jerry filled in a very necessary void that provided me a lot more of an insight as to the life, the life of the Jewish community in the Bronx, in the area that I currently live now, which is across the street from where Jerry ended up living as well. And we would have so many conversations, whether it came from us walking back and forth to Rabbi Choli Mushka's house on Shabbos and on the high holidays. A lot of times those conversations just turn into like talks about baseball and other things and sports, which he and I both are very passionate about. But more or less, it was always the stories, and he ended up telling me that kind of filled in the necessary gap of information that due to my grandfather's and my beloved Zadie's untimely passing when I was very young. I never thought that I can be so close with an individual who can give me that insight. And Jerry did exactly that. And
Elliot, that was that fact that he always he'd rather walk home with you. It was like a 25-minute walk, I believe, every single week. He was always ready to walk, and that was
hang out.
Yeah, that was always a true trooper of his to do that.
Emily's gonna share with us her a few words that you shared at the funeral. Emily, you wanna do that now? You're on mute.
Unmuted, yes. At work, I'm known as the person who is always on mute. Some of you have heard this, and I tried to make it short, but I will share it just for those of you who have not heard it. He was Jerry to everyone, but always Uncle Gerald to me. He was 21 when I was born. He could tell you the exact temperature. It was really, really hot. He could tell you the day of the week, what he was doing when my dad called to tell him I had arrived, and what he and another good friend had to eat to celebrate. He probably could also tell you who pitched and who won that day. At one point, I decided I was old enough to call him Gerald, not Uncle Gerald. Well, that did not go over well. He went to my mom and asked her if she could ask me to please call him Uncle Gerald. And of course I did, forever and ever. And that's how my kids know him as well. Everyone's looking at me. I'm a little embarrassed. He adored his parents, his big sister, his cousins, his brother-in-law, his friends, his colleagues. He welcomed Stephen into all of our lives when we got married. And he loved the Brooklyn Dodgers. He was loyal and generous and stubborn. He loved marinara sauce, with John especially. He loved egg creams, tuna on white bread, salami on eggs, Katz's Delicatessen, Eisenberg's, Woe Hop in Chinatown, chicken and peanuts, fried rice, egg rolls, Carvel, and Baskin Robbins. One of my most, it wasn't one of the most recent, but it was one of the most memorable meals I had with Uncle Gerald was, he had I don't know if any of you know, he had breast cancer, of all the things for a man to have, about 5 years ago when my 6-year-old was just a baby. And he went into the hospital and he had surgery. And I went up there and stayed with him just to help him in that few days, recovering from surgery. And he didn't talk about it, of course, but I went to stay with him. And his apartment was a giant mess and it drove me crazy, but I was very happy to be there with him. And we ordered out Chinese food from the little hole in the wall place down the block. And it was one of the best meals that I have ever had in my entire life. They do not make Chinese food like that in North Carolina at all. But he knew what to eat and where to get it. And he had fabulous taste. And speaking of food, he loved to lavish my children with the famous Lilac chocolates, which is a chocolate factory that's been around for, I think, over 100 years at this point. And if you haven't tried it, you should. He would have his chocolates shipped overnight straight from the factory for my children for every single holiday and birthday. And I'm sure, I mean, this is fancy, expensive chocolate, but I'm sure he spent more on the postage than he did on the chocolate, just so it would get there on time. As I mentioned earlier, he lived with his parents his whole life. He cared for his mother in her last years all by himself. He was heartbroken when his big sister was diagnosed with ALS. Anyone was there. Oh, let me see. Oh, I mentioned earlier that he welcomed Stephen into our lives with open arms. And anyone who was there at our wedding, and anyone who has ever heard him tell a story can only imagine that he gave the most beautiful and heartfelt wedding speech that any of us had ever heard. Somehow he worked into it that he took us to see E.T. when we were little, didn't he? Wasn't that part of the speech? He was an amazing, amazing, amazing storyteller. And if you met him, you wouldn't necessarily know that. He would just kind of like grumble at you until you got him to actually talking. His childhood friends were his family for his entire life. He found an amazing and caring community of shared experience amongst a huge crowd of Facebook friends. He found spirituality, new family, new friends, so much meaning, a connection to his father who had been gone for so long, and religion, and more delicious food, a Chabad community. He was an amazing, generous, and loving human being, and we drove each other crazy, but I will always, always miss him. And I do just want to add that every single thing I put on Facebook or Instagram, he immediately would have a comment for it, and it drove me nuts, and I miss it every single day, and I will always miss it. Every day I take pictures of the cats. I take pictures of the kids. I'm like, I have to send this to Uncle Gerald, and I can't. And it stinks, and I miss him, and I love him. And I know you all do too.
Thank you, Emily.
Thank you.
That's really.
I was going to say, in honor of Jerry, as the Yankee game begins today, I just want to say, beer here.
Beer here?
Beer here.
Is that what you would say?
That's what
Get
we would
your beer
call
here.
when we
Get
sold
your
our
beer here.
beer.
That's how you hawk the beer. In this.
Thank you, Mark.
I'm sure they're going to win today in his honor, even though he was a Dodgers fan.
Yeah. Can I just say something? Because, you know, I grew up with him as his younger cousin, so Emily's cousin as well. But he was just such a kind person, you know, very humble. And he always had a good story. I mean, he had an excellent memory, and he was an excellent writer. I think he was even published. I don't know, Emily, if you know this. I think Science Fiction Story was published. I'm not sure where, though. I did hear that, though, in the mythology of the family. Yeah. But, you know, I think he was the definition of a mensch. He was really, you know, kind and caring and loving. And we were actually related on both sides of our family, because not only our mothers were first cousins, our mothers were sisters, but our fathers were first cousins. So we were related on both sides of the family. And I think he was really a very good historian, you know, of the community in the Bronx, but also the family. And it was like every, you know, couple of weeks, he would DM me, or I would DM him with photographs of when we were kids, or our parents when they were younger, you know, just bringing back a lot of memories. And you know, I wish he was here today, but, you know, his memory truly is a blessing. You know, I think he, of everybody's life that he did touch, you know, he was just such a kind and warm person, you know, sharing his life with us. And, you know, I think he does live on with us, you know, although he's not here, you know, his memory is a blessing to all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandra. That was beautiful.
Thank you.
John, no, unmute yourself.
Sorry. Says Ann Conti. I'm John. This is my wife's machine. I just want to say hi, Emily. Hi. You're in my thoughts a lot. Rabbi and Shauna, so nice to see you again. Veronica, thank you for that lovely, lovely poem you posted that for many to see. I have to keep it brief because I can be here all day. Jerry and I, you speak of writing. When we were in 4th grade, I sat in front of him. And in 5th grade, he had a composition book. He was writing stories, mostly Twilight Zone, our favorite show. On my report card, it said, "Stop turning around to talk to Jerry." We did everything. Baseball cards, punch bowl, all the places you mentioned, Whoa Hopcats, as we went, whenever a 007 movie came out, we saw it together on its debut. Officer Lee, you and your brother always in my thoughts. Jerry was so happy to be with you. Such great stories. I shot a message to you. I don't know if you ever got it, but you meant a lot to Jerry. And I see you're in the 4-6. I'm an old volunteer EMT auxiliary from the 4-6 back in the day. And I know what's going on down there, or at least what used to go on. And I was proud to serve for free, helping a lot of people in that whole area on a rescue truck. The cheesecake and all that sort of thing, when you got it, I saw Jeffrey show me the photos. Everything everybody said here, I've heard about from Jerry. I'd get weird texts, 7 a.m. to 11 a.m., asking me about certain details in the neighborhood, which pizzeria, which soda shop, only to find a couple days later an incredible story about the same on Facebook. Actually, I wasn't much on Facebook, but Jerry would send the link to me so I could see his stories. They were great. I can go on and on. He did even more at the stadium, by the way. He sold merchandise where, you know, it was a little elevated position where he got commission and stuff like that. On and on and on. Jerry was instrumental in getting a lot of us together through the years. I showed one of the photos, and that wasn't the only time. We got together and took hikes together, but that was the largest group. He got 5 of us from the early 60s, which was wonderful to see. I miss him. Thank you for doing this. Can't text him anymore. He used to text me all the time, and I texted him even for just how you doing. As I texted him Friday, and I called him, but he texted me back, but he was too tired. I wish I called him again, but I don't guess I couldn't have done anything. I'm sorry, but anyway, all you guys are great. Thank you for doing this, Rabbi, and it was wonderful meeting both of you. All the best to everyone here. Thank you for doing this.
Thank you, John.
Okay.
Thank you, John. He loved you so much. He told me every time you guys met for dinner and everything you ate, you were a huge, important person to him.
John, I'm a good friend of Emily's from her past, and you could always write him a letter if it would make you feel better, and try to connect with him that way and tell him whatever you would have normally told him. But just to feel that connection. I did that with a loved one who I lost, and it did help a little bit.
You could send it to me.
Yeah, right. Yeah, there you go.
Thank you.
That's a really nice idea.
Thank you.
And John, thank you. I just looked in my messages, which further brought me to tears, but I really appreciate that. And now we're Facebook friends, so I did see the message now. It was sent to an inbox that I didn't look at. I'm sorry about that.
Okay, great. I'm glad you got it. Okay, good.
Does anyone else want to share something? Sarah?
Hi, everybody. I'm Sarah Schwartzberg Swift, and I'm calling from the Tel Aviv area. My mother, Bluma Yashchensky, was the elder half-sister of Frida and Miriam. Didn't know they existed. After World War II, my parents looked for Meir and they didn't find him. I don't know when he died, but I was born in Germany in a DP camp. I was a few months in DP camp, but Meir had a sister, Lube, and a brother who I never met. He must have died early, that were in Australia. And a niece also. The uncle married the niece, Heike. And so they couldn't find my grandfather in America. My father wanted to come to Israel, but family is family. And all the cousins that survived went to Australia. And I understand they changed the name to Zemsky. Is it also Zemsky?
Here it was Zamsky, Zamsky, right? Is that right, Sandy?
Yeah, the story was that when they came through Ellis Island, it got changed to Zamsky.
Oh, okay. Okay, so what I didn't know they existed, and I understand, I don't know, it was Anita's husband who worked for some JNF or something in Israel, and somehow we found this. And listening to all the stories about Jerry writing stories, I remember I started corresponding with Frieda, and she liked writing too, and I must find the letters and maybe put them up. And I remember she said, listening, I think she said he had a degree in journalism, and he's working at the Yankee Stadium. He did come to Israel once. I understand he had a whole collection of comic books, and he sent some to my son, Michael. And so we had back to that Aunt Liebe or Lube, and the brother that I didn't know. So I sort of grew up without a family, and it was so nice to meet him. And listening to the story about him telling stories and stuff. I like telling stories too. And someone who was speaking to my son, he said, after he'd spoken to me, he says, I see where you get your storytelling.
You're on mute now, Sarah. You got muted. Sarah.
We can't hear you.
Let me unmute her. Can I unmute her? Oh, there you are. You just unmuted.
Someone called me. It must have blocked you. Yes, but it's so nice to listen to you. And I don't use Facebook, so I'm not in the group. And the other cousin in Australia, Roz, is on the Facebook. It's 3 o'clock in the morning in Australia, in Melbourne. So she'll see the film. Well, thank you, and may he be blessed. And about the word for Mishama, Mishnah, in Hebrew, the same letters are Mishaneh, which means change. So he's certainly changed, and I think maybe just talking about has changed and lightened our hearts as well, and we put a smile on our face. Thank you.
Thank you. Beautiful. Would anyone else want to say something before?
Sure, I would say something. This is Doug and Michelle, and I just want to say that I think we know Jerry pretty well, and just through Chabad. But in addition to his love for baseball, he was obviously in the union for many years, and actually very political, but not political in the sense of being for this candidate or that candidate, but really being for the worker. And so when the whole COVID thing was happening, his greatest concern wasn't even for himself, but it was for all the people who were dependent on the jobs, and how the Yankees, which were still making tons of money, that they had no loyalty to the workers, to the, who have nothing but love and give all their time and energy, to the work. And then additionally, he's always there to return a call or stand up or help anybody at any point in time. When I was working on an animation and I needed a voice and I needed somebody with a thick
Bronx accent, he was like the first person that came to mind. And like within a call, he's like, well, when do you need this? And I could say an hour later, he would totally be there. I'm like, yeah, we can do this tomorrow or the next day. He's like, if you need it in an hour, we'll do it in an hour. You know, like come, you know, and when he came over, it was the worst situation for him because he's not a short guy. I recorded my kids and I emptied out my closet so I could get good audio. And my kids fit okay in my closet when I'm recording audio, but he's not such a great fit in my closet. He just sit there in the closet and record all this audio for like an hour or two. It was hot already. It was a very warm day, and on top of that, it was a big deal that he came over and did it. And then it wasn't even just one time. We had to do pickups, so he did it multiple times till we got it right. But I'll tell you what, such emotion in his voice and the way he read and just in the way he talked. You know, like he can make anything sound funny if you wanted it to sound funny.
One of the best voices in the animation.
I think that was fun for him.
And sometimes we used to give him rides around and you know, just enjoyed the conversations, you know, when he needed to get somewhere, you know.
He always had a story. It was great.
He always had a story. And very kind to our two kids as well.
Yeah. Thank you, Doug. Michelle.
May I just mention how kind he was, and his heart always came through. He did birthday fundraisers on Facebook for Paul Newman's Hole in the Wall gang on the behalf of children, and it was genuine. Everybody does fundraisers, but not all of them are genuine 365 days of the year to who they are. And it was just a pleasure to reconnect with him because he had all the memories from the tiny little school in the Bronx about all the teachers we knew and the principal. So it was just great to reconnect with him. And we'd always laugh about birthday cupcakes. So he'll be very missed. It was wonderful to reconnect with him. He was real.
I've heard the birthday cupcake story many times.
And crayons. We loved crayons. He'd get very excited about crayons.
Especially blue-green, which is also my favorite color. The best color.
It's lovely that he kept all those great memories from childhood, and his memory was unbelievable.
Yes.
So I got you. Am I on? Do I have volume? Oh, okay. So we would see Jerry usually at least once a year on Thanksgiving when Anita and Henry would host a large crowd in their apartment in the city, and he was an Adel, a very sweet, if you all know, kind, and very, very super devoted to his family. And he loved Robbie and Emily, and and he was a devoted son. I mean, I remember Frida and Maya very well, and we got the invitations to the mandolin orchestra that Maya played in. Really amazing, and they were a very big part of our life, and we miss them terribly. We really miss them, and a big part of our children's lives. That was one thing that our children look forward to every year. We would all meet on Central Park West, across from the Spanish-Portuguese synagogue, and after the parade, sometime later, we would migrate down to Henry and Anita's place, and it was just the most magical time of the year. And my oldest son, who now lives in California, One of the big things that he would come back to New York with his wife just to go to the Thanksgiving Day parade, and now to introduce he has two little young children, and it was just it's hard. We know many people who are here but not here, but it's hard. It's hard to really take it in when someone who is such an alive person and a vital person and someone who was cared about so much by so many, takes the next step, which eventually we'll all take, but it's just terribly missed.
Gerald, as Emily, as all your family were part of our tradition for Thanksgiving. And when Thanksgiving rolls around, that's what we think of mostly as the tradition of us all being together. And I think missing Gerald is going to be a large part of that now too. And I just will miss his texts to me as well. He always wanted to do the right thing. He was never sure, especially coming to Chabad. He had all these questions. Could he do this? Could he bring that? What should he do? And he would shoot me all these texts all the time, asking me for advice. And I certainly will miss those little texts popping up on my screen. That's for sure. And we just hope that moving forward, Emily and the children, please keep in touch with us. Don't disappear.
We just hope, Rabbi and Rebbitzin, that your shlichus in the Bronx reaches out to many more people like Gerald, that you bring the richness to other lives that you brought to his life. And we wish you Arihat Yamin v'atzlacha in everything that you do.
He did feel part of the family. He really did. I mean, I know you had a bar mitzvah fairly recently, right? And he felt so involved with Chabad and your family, and it was a beautiful thing. He told me he liked to come to you for Friday night dinner, and he was there for Shabbat. He just really, and you really enriched his life, and we thank you for that.
Thank you. He enriched ours too.
Mm.
Yeah.
Do you want to say something about Jerry?
Will, do you remember Jerry?
Yeah.
What's the memory that stands out? Oh, Jerry, come over here.
Do you want to say something? No? Okay. How do you want to say this and then this?
Okay, yeah. So, Daniel, are you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Yeah, a big part of his life.
Yeah.
Yeah, he asked about you.
Oh, really? Oh, that's so sweet. I was one of the Chabad congregation for everyone who wasn't part of that and doesn't know me. And I moved away from New York recently, and I really have really missed it. And Jerry was always a big part of that, and it was really wonderful to see him at all of the at all of the things. And he I just have to echo what Elliot said, that I had a lot of older family that grew up in that part of the Bronx, the same part of the Bronx that Jerry spent his whole life, and it was just a really wonderful sort of magical thing to have that connection with the history of what that neighborhood used to be, and what it is, to feel like that's still, like it still is that, and that knowing that he had been there for all of that is really it was really wonderful to get to know him and talk to him about all of his experiences there. And it's really I'm really glad I'm able to be here for this, and I will I'll miss him.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you, Daniel.
Mm-hmm.
But may I add one thing, Rabbi? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
All of us sharing these experiences, Jerry was like an extension of the great generation. He had an incredible ability to recollect something that I certainly was present. We would go to ball games, and I remember, we went to a ball game. He says, John, we went in July 14th. They played Baltimore, and the Yankees won. And I'm going, crying. He had an incredible sense of recollection, very nostalgic. We would go to Lower East Side. We went to Economy Candy. We'd go to the Chelsea where Emily grew up. Details. He was a walking videotape, and he can convey it in such an interesting way. Like, you think you're there, for crying out loud. It was like watching a movie. We'd have a Joe's Pizza, and we'd sit in the village there in the park, and he would just relate stories about his dad playing music, his grandnieces that he loved so much. And guys, I saw pictures of each of you when you were coming into this world and baking and doing all the wonderful things that Emily does with you. It's a great loss in a number of ways, because people are a little too shallow now, and with all the mechanisms that we have of video and this and that, we don't absorb as much because of our devices. We're even at events and we're looking at our phone, the events through our phone rather than taking them in. And Jerry's recollection was so unique. And the stories, if you read them, how many people reacted that didn't even know him, that felt they were in the space that he was writing about? It was a talent. And we were lucky to have experienced it. And I'm sorry it ended so damn soon. It shouldn't have, but it did. But obviously, from what we've all heard here, he made an impact. And what more can you do in your life than that? So I just had to say that because it was phenomenal. We all know people and we all tell stories, but he had an incredible keen sense of recollection. And that's not something that many people have. And I'm glad he got to share it with all of us. And each of you were in those stories that I heard. Everybody there, everybody. And he was, I don't know how his phone handled it, because he's texting all of us. If we had a hot dog, we text each other how good it was. Do you put mustard on it? You put relish. It was a joke. And I'm not the only one. I mean, I had a lot of texts with him, but as did so many of you. How did he possibly do it? What a speed texter he must have been. But anyway, it's great that we had him while we did. Thank you again for doing this, and I'm proud to have been his friend.
Thank you, John.
I think the best way to really carry on his life in this world, in this realm, is really to take one of these lessons that we learned from him and put it into practice, like what you said, being more present, or all the other lessons that you guys shared, to just think about maybe something practical that you can take from his life. And that's really how his life carries on down here, because his soul lives forever.
You also light a candle every Friday in his honor. Emily, I think if you're able to do that, it'll be really special for his neshama, for the year of his year of passing. Every Friday to light a candle in his honor and his merit, and of course there's other practical things we can take from all the stories that we heard today, and just continue like Yoni said, we should, or and John will continue to stay in touch, and we should get together on joyous occasions.
Mm-hmm.
So we're gonna do a little bit of the Mishnah.
May I interrupt just to say that one of Uncle Gerald's longtime friends just joined us, and I just wanted to see if he wanted to say anything. No pressure. Stuart.
Hey, Stuart.
I'm sorry I'm late, but
right on time.
I worked with Jerry in Yankee Stadium, and so I knew him since, amazingly, 1970. I can't figure out how long that is, but it's a long time. I know. And we were close there, and I'd always stop at his stand when he later on when he was selling programs. But earlier, we were selling beer together and joking around together, and he was, as I'm sure you guys have shared, he was a very gentle soul, and really enjoyed his commentary about the Bronx on Facebook, which I'm sure you talked about, and he just was very sensitive, just to be able to want to share those thoughts that he had and to express them, and knowing that they might touch somebody. You know, it's a wonderful thing to recognize a certain sense of beauty in an egg cream or in a person, and then to share that is also a wonderful thing, because you know that it might make somebody smile or bring a fond memory to that person, and he did that, whether he was talking about black and whites in those bakeries in the Bronx or whatever, you know. And I'm sure you guys have spoken about all of the gastronomical stories that he had, the perfect pastrami sandwich or whatever it might be, and those really fond memories of the Bronx. And we would, you know, by being working colleagues, we also shared stories about our fellow vendors, etc. And I'm also an actor, and so he came to see me in some of my shows, and he always was very positive and uplifting with his comments. And I know I'm not telling you anything you didn't know. It's just he really affected a lot of people by sharing his wisdom, and his sense of caring was really wonderful. So I thank you for allowing me to talk about Jerry.
Thank you. That was beautiful.
Thank you, Stuart. Really nice to hear from you.
My pleasure.
Okay. So we have here the first Mishnah. It's in the laws of Rosh Hashanah, and maybe we could share. We could pass around reading. Each one of us could read one Mishnah. Okay.
Well, basically what we're doing is that we're spelling his name out in Hebrew through this Jewish text. So his Hebrew name was Yaakov ben Meir. So we're starting with the Yud, which is the first letter of his name. And then we just do one, like, a small paragraph for each letter of his Hebrew name. And that's because your name is really strongly connected to the essence of a person, to the soul of a person. So this is a special way to connect with his soul today.
So the laws of Rosh Hashanah, chapter number 4. Yom Tov of Rosh Hashanah. Sorry, I'll read it in English. With regard to the festival day of Rosh Hashanah that occurs on Shabbat, so in the temple they would sound the shofar as usual. However, they would not sound it in the rest of the country outside the temple, because one is not supposed to carry on Shabbat outside of their homes. So only in the temple was where they blew the shofar, and the rest, if Shabbat was on Rosh Hashanah, they didn't blow it. After the temple was destroyed, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai instituted that. Okay, I'm just going to give a brief. I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'll just briefly do it. So that's the first letter. The second letter we have here is Ayin, for the second letter of his name, Yaakov. And this is about the eve of Passover, that one should be careful before on Passover to have a good healthy appetite for the evening, for the Seder. So one should not have a full meal on the eve of Passover, which we just celebrated, in order to give us a better appetite for the matzah and the wine. This is the laws of vows. This starts with the letter Kuf, Konam, which is the third letter of his name. And it describes how a person that makes a vow or a promise, these days is something that we could really be more careful on. We're actually obligated to fulfill it. If a person says, I'm going to refrain from drinking wine for a small period of time, if he just says a week, then he has to do it for a week. If he says a month, then he has to do it for a full month. So, because everything that comes out of a person's mouth, any word that comes out of a person's mouth, unless he specifically says, I'm not promising, that he doesn't say he's not promising, then he has to own up to it, own his words. The next, this is in Ethics of Our Fathers, chapter 4. A very beautiful Mishnah, and it begins with Ben Zoma would say that who is wise? What is considered a wise person? So you would think a wise person is someone that's very good at math, someone that's very smart, but the Torah tells us what a definition of a wise person is. That a wise person is somebody that learns from every single person, that he learns from every man. He finds wisdom in everything he sees. And that's really what a wise person is. And then the Mishnah continues, and who is a strong person? So it doesn't say a strong person. Maybe a strong person is like like Samson, but that's not what the Mishnah says, because there's somebody that could be stronger than Samson. The definition of a strong person is someone that's able to control his emotions and slow to anger with all his might. And that's somebody that could be that you could consider as a strong person.
This is really describing Jerry to me. This Mishnah, who is rich.
Who is rich? One who is happy with his lot. Rich is not how much money you have or how much more money you have of your friend. Is if you're happy with your lot, then you are the definition of rich. Who is honorable? One who honors his fellows. As it stated, for those who honor me, I accord honor. Those who scorn me shall be demeaned. And of course, Jerry was always respectful and honorable to other people. The next one, so I'm just going a little bit quick. This is about the laws of the priest's benediction. During the festivals, or in the temple times, every single day, the priests would go and they would duchen, they would spread they would bless the people. They were designated by God to be and Daniel, you were our Cohen over here.
That's right.
Right? So these laws of Yom Kippur, it says that they would so 3 times a year the priest would bless the people, and on Yom Kippur they would do it 5 times. Now
we're starting with
this is Ben, the son of Meir. So we're doing a letter Nun. This is about the laws of carrying on Shabbat, that if a child is holding a stone and is crying, then you don't want your children to carry things on the street on Shabbat, but if the child is crying, and if you take out the stone, he's gonna have a tantrum. It's actually in inside, even inside a home, because a stone is not something which is it's something which is set aside, not to be used on Shabbat. But if the child is holding on to it and clamping onto it, you're allowed to pick up the child, and you don't have to take the stone out of his hand. This is now Meir. His father's name is Meir. This is the beginning. This is the first, actually the first Mishnah in the whole 6 columns of the Mishnah, and it begins with, the beginning of this is the first book of oral law, and it's the laws of blessings, and it describes when does the beginning of saying the Shema, the Jewish prayer of proclaiming the oneness of Hashem. There's a biblical verse that says we should do it both in the evening and when we wake up and when we go to sleep. So the Mishnah brings different opinions of when is it considered the right time, and how much of the evening how much time in the evening do you have to proclaim the Shema. Now Meir Aleph, the second letter of his father's name. We do not stand up to pray.
When you get ready to pray, you get ready with get serious.
Yeah, when it comes to prayer, it should be with right preparation and with joy and with happiness, and the person has to be in the right state to begin his prayers. Yud, Yom Kippur, the laws of Yom Kippur. Obviously, the laws of no eating and drinking, and washing and anointing oils, or wearing leather shoes, or having intimate relations. However, there's an exception for a king and a bride. A bride within the week of her wedding, she's allowed to bathe. She's allowed and a pregnant woman, or a woman that just gave birth, is obviously allowed to wear her shoes because of the danger of her the danger of cold floors. Now the final letter of his father's name is the laws of Shabbat, about weaving on Shabbat, the complications in doing that, how many strings and whatnot. And with that, we finished completing the Mishnah connected to his soul, like Sarah said, also Mishaneh. Never heard that. It was beautiful. That's a beautiful idea. And when one studies Torah, even just one Mishnah, it could change you from one degree to the next. And it's definitely this is an honor. This learning that we just did is in honor of Gerald, Uncle Gerald, and may his neshama have an aliyah, which means his neshama should be uplifted into the higher heights of the world of truth, and may he also be a good to better, which means he should have us in mind in heaven and pray for us down here, his friends and family, that we should all be safe and secure and happy and continue living beautiful lives. Thank you all for joining, and this was a wonderful gathering, and thank you, Emily, for getting the word out, and everyone that's shared this is beautiful. And you guys, if anyone wants, could still chime in that didn't get a chance to mention something. I don't know if Michael, if you want to.
Mm-hmm.
You're on mute, Michael.
I didn't know Jerry very long. I know him from Chabad. He was one of the machers, one of the first ones that showed up and kept showing up and kept showing up. He will be missed. There's no question about it. Listening to his stories kind of filled in some blanks for me. My father had a factory, handbag factory on 153rd Street in the South Bronx, when the South Bronx was kind of the second garment center. And I had heard stories from my dad about some of the delis that the Jewish manufacturers would go to, or the guys that were in the knitting trades. And some of the places that my dad had shared with me were some of the same places that Jerry had frequented as a child and as a young man. And there was a couple of overlaps that he and I had shared. He talked with me about crumbs that I had known about, and Alexander's, and Mother's Deli on the Grand Concourse, and Palace Deli on 188th Street off the concourse, and then the famous ice cream place. I think it was John's Ice Cream or Jan's Ice Cream off of Kingsbridge. And I, as a child, had gone to all of these places with my father. So, to have made that kind of connection with him was unique in and of itself. Thank you for paying tribute to Jerry. He will be missed. Uncle Gerald. So all of the above, also known as. So, and thank you, Chali and Chanamushka, for hosting this Zoom call today, this Zoom tribute. Thank you very much.
Thank you.